Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We are here with Keirsten Greggs and Noel Coca on what you should stop, start, and continue in diversity and recruiting. This is going to be an interactive Q&A session, so we hope you brought your questions. Please submit, and we will be watching the whole time. I'm just going to give everybody a few minutes to log in while we stare at this big yellow screen. Hey, Noel and Keirsten.
Hello.
Hey. So we've got people logging in.
Excellent.
Just a couple more minutes so we can make sure everybody has the housekeeping information. I'll go ahead and click over to this. I hate to leave our little chair people behind, but I think we're going to have to do that.
Bye, chair people.
Okay, so those numbers are going up. I'll go ahead and get started. You are in listen only mode. That means that you can hear us, but we can't hear you. No worries. If you have questions, if you've brought any thoughts with you today to discuss, just use the questions panel to submit your questions and comments to Keirsten and Noel. You will receive a copy of the slide deck, any notes we use, and the recording within 2 to 3 days of the webinar, probably sooner, but we like to give ourselves a little bit of buffer. And please share. If you know anyone who would be interested in this webinar or this conversation, just use the hashtag #RDaily, share all over social media, send it via email. We want to have you here. We have with us today Keirsten, and I'm going to hand this over now to you and Noel. Keirsten, because I think you'll do a much better job of introducing yourself than I ever could. We are so happy to have you here. Thank you so much, and thank you, Noel, for being here with us today.
Excited.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Noel. Thanks for having me on today. Looking forward to a great conversation.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us your background, just for anyone who might not know you.
So very quickly, because I do really want to get into this conversation, I am the founder and CEO of Trap Recruiter LLC. I'm a talent acquisition consultant and career coach, and my passion is bridging the gap between job seekers and the organizations who are looking to attract, retain the best diverse talent that they can.
Okay. And I'm Noel Coca, and the founder CEO of RecruitingDaily, and here trying to help as many recruiters get as smart as they can for their jobs. I know it's a tough job in a tough field and always challenging, and you know, I love recruiting. I have been a recruiter for many years and love helping everybody out. So Keirsten, I know you came kind of, we could kind of have like a little bit of an agenda with our slides and some questions, but where would you like to start?
Just starting with the conversation, I always like to start on a bright note. Ashley, if you could go to the next slide, and just talk about what is going right in diversity recruiting, or diversity and inclusion recruitment, however you'd like to name it. And the main takeaway for me, as someone who has been in the recruiting and talent acquisition space for 21 years, is that it's really part of the conversation, and not just seasonally, not just reactively as it relates to something that occurred inside of your organization or something that occurred that, a whistle was blown or something like that, that it's really becoming a part of the daily conversations. And people are really looking for ways to incorporate diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, whichever other culture, justice. I've seen, a good number of additional letters added to D&I. And that's great too, that we're looking to evolve the conversation, that we're looking to advance it. And that's the main thing that I think organizations are getting right. They're also being a little bit more transparent in the sense that when they don't know what to do, they're raising their hand and they're saying, you know what, I don't know what to do. Prior to, we would do reporting, and say what the state of D&I was in our organizations. And we would put out this report, but then like, okay, now what? Nothing really came from it. It was just a matter of saying what you're doing, and then say, okay, but we're going to do better. And then adding to it, we're going to do better, by adding 20 people, over the course of 2 years or whatever the case may be, but not really getting into how, not really getting into a strategy. And then one of the problems is like not really knowing what to do with folks once they get there. Like you're maintaining that same homogeneous environment, and then you're wondering why your attrition is so high for certain demographics, or like why you simply can't retain them. So again, I think organizations are looking more closely at how they are engaging D&I. And then widening the scope of the conversations. We all recognize what happened here in the US over the summer. For a great number of people, that wasn't anything new. It was just that we were all kind of equalized in the sense that we were all, stuck in place or sheltered in place. Those of us that decided to do that, those of us that had the luxury to do that, I should say. And, we literally watched certain things take place in our country. We were all fatigued by the constant political narratives that were being shared every single day. People were taking sides. There was a lot of arguments going on. It became if you like green, then you're bad. If you like red, then you're good. There was a whole lot of things going on, and a whole lot of attention and focus being put on, organizations. And one thing I love about recruiting, one thing I love about hiring, one thing I love about what we're charged with, what our focus is that we touch everything. We touch everything inside of the organization, and everything we do is reflected externally and internally. So I love recruiting, and I love, like I said, that we're widening the scope of those conversations. Because when I first started, diversity meant college hires. Diversity meant hire more women. And when I say hire more women, I meant hire more white women. Because I worked for large defense and intel organizations that were heavily engineering or heavily technical, and those were the areas that they were looking to increase representation of women at all levels, not just leadership. And again, working in defense and intel, diversity meant veterans. We ran, constant campaigns. We partnered with certain organizations. So, we've now since widened the scope of what those things mean. College recruiting is not the only avenue to get early career people. And I think more people are talking about that. Gender is being discussed in a less binary sense. And again, I love veterans. And one thing I love about veterans is that veterans encompass every single marginalized demographic, whether it be race, whether it be gender, whether it be different ability, whether it, all of those things, like they encompass everything the same way that a racial demographic would. So I love that we're expanding the conversation. That to me is what organizations are doing right. How do you feel about that? Do you think that I'm missing the mark anywhere?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, actually. And I'm recalling that pre-pandemic, some of the content, in my areas, and I'm looking at a lot of different content, and I was excited to see even neurodiversity being explored, and exploring pools of people who don't have access to jobs because of neurodiverse issues that they're facing on a daily basis. And just excited to see, more, not only more conversation, but action, and then people being held accountable to making sure it's getting done. It's exciting to see. And I think organizations, I don't want to say all of them have the best intent, but I think they are shooting for the best intent. And I think that's right now, we need to actually see action, as much action as possible on a regular basis, in all areas of this. And finally, it seems to be, landing.
Yeah, I agree. If you want to go to the next slide.
Very quickly, we're having an issue viewing the entire slide. I'm unable to change the ratio of the screen, but I have attached a copy of the slide deck to the handout section for anyone who'd like to download it there.
Okay, no
Thanks.
problem.
And I think most of the information we're giving is verbal anyway.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Thanks, y'all.
Okay.
So I think the next slide is, in your experience, what have organizations gotten wrong?
They are.
Yeah, it's a long one.
Yes. I'm going to take my top one. You know, they're looking at it more as a sense of representation. And representation only goes so far when folks aren't empowered. And again, when folks don't feel safe, and for me, it has been a safety issue. And I don't mean necessarily just physically safe, but mentally safe, emotionally safe, financially safe, like safe all around, like in every aspect. And a lot of times we don't foster enough inclusion. We don't foster enough belonging in organizations where people feel, you know, safe enough to come to work. You know, we talk a great deal about toxic work environments, and they're way more common than those, you know, extreme cases that we hear about, or the ones that go viral. And this is not to say that those viral instances are not, you know, terribly bad, but you know, we have to think about the things that people are living with every single day. I'm not good with analogies because I mix up a lot of stuff, but I know there's one where it's like, you know, a drop in a bucket like makes a hole or something. I'm totally messing that up, and hopefully someone will tell me what it is. You know, tweet me, or you know, send me hit me on LinkedIn or something and let me know what the actual analogy is. But you know, like over time, those things make a big hole. So over time, if you're in a situation where you're constantly microaggressed, or where you are having issues, like I said, just even feeling like you fit in, feeling like you belong, that's going to be a problem. And I think a lot of times, you know, organizations are quick to say, "Oh, we met our hiring goals," and then they're done with it. But again, like, what else did you do? Another thing that folks are getting wrong, in my view, is something that you just touched on. You mentioned intention and people having the best intentions. And one of my good friends, Sarah Morgan, has done a great deal around intention versus impact. And I used to, you know, have this, you know, catchphrase. I like alliteration, so I'll be like intentional inclusion, but that's not enough. We have to go beyond intention and think about what the impact is of the things that we're doing. We have to be thinking about outcomes, not just, you know, that we have the best intentions. So I think organizations are getting that wrong in the sense that they're not considering it. And then, like I said, just having better mechanisms in place for greater equity, for greater inclusion, and for greater belonging. It's great that you can hire. It's great that you're selecting, you know, a more diverse employee population. But again, do they feel safe? Are they included? Are they paid equitably? Will they be promoted? Will they be able to do will they be able to move along and grow within the organization when they leave? Because let's be honest, like no one is staying at organizations forever anymore, and we shouldn't expect that. Like that should not be an expectation at this point. You know, when they leave, you know, in my opinion, like you're broadening your reach. You know, you're adding to, you know, your reputation in the marketplace, and you want people to think and to speak kindly of you, and to talk about the experience they have and why they moved on, because you know that, you know, you guys built them up as much as you could, or you know, working together collaboratively, like they developed as much as they could, like, and now they're taking those skills to the next place. And by the way, they'll be able to reach back and pull some other people. They may be able to reach back and pull you. You guys may be able to collaborate on other things, you know, one organization to another. So again, I think it matters that we have the right mechanisms in place, and I don't think enough organizations are getting past the numbers and really thinking with thinking impact and thinking outcome.
You know, we got a question, and do you want me to throw it out here?
Sure.
Sure. So this is from Srinivasa Raju. Hope I said your name correctly. Shouldn't diversity in its true and complete sense be automatic and unconsciously unbiased instead of trying to be consciously unbiased?
So here's the thing. My good friend Margaret Spence says there's no such thing as unconscious bias. And people may think, that's a horrible thing to say. But I think we're too tied to and married to language and words. And I'm not saying that that's not a good thing, but certain things we need to not attach value to in a way that says they're good or they're bad. Everyone has biases. Everyone should know what their biases are so that they can course correct along their when they're making judgments, you know, and say, okay, am I thinking this because this is true, or am I thinking this because this is my opinion about it? Diversity is not natural, especially not here in the United States. I can speak for specifically because I work here, and I've only worked in the United States, although I have hired folks in other countries. They've been US citizens, so they've always adhered to US laws and customs. So the thing is, we have a systemic issue that we can't say that just thinking about diversity is going to change things. And again, it goes back to definition, it goes back to language, because I think when a lot of people think diversity, or they think diversity and inclusion, they're thinking only about that one thing. They're thinking only about representation. They're thinking only about numbers. They're not thinking about what that really means for the organization, as you know, in the long term, or what that really means for how that affects the outside world, how that affects their employee culture and those type of things. So no, I don't think that it's a let's just, you know, figure it out, everything's going to be okay. Because if we're going to be honest, most people are around people who are similar to them. You know, there's an affinity bias. You know, of all of the things that I am, whether it be a woman, whether it be someone who's in a sorority, a Christian, heterosexual, a recruiter, you know, of all the things that I am, I'm first and foremost, and this is my decision, I'm first and foremost Black, you know, so I'm going to navigate, I'm going to naturally, you know, have an affinity or gravitate to people who quote unquote look like me, first and foremost, before we ever have a conversation, before we ever do anything, you know. And this is not to say that, like, this isn't about hate, this isn't about you know, dislike for other things. It's just like, I come from a Black family, and when I'm introduced to a new environment, the first thing I'm going to do is, you know, look for a Black person. If there's no Black person there, I'm probably looking for another racialized minority. If there's none of those, I'm probably looking for a woman. You know, there's just certain things that we're doing, and those things are natural. So to say that I should not be aware of that, you know, I'm just telling you now, I know that I do that. Mm-hmm. So to say that I should not, that I should keep those biases that I have unconscious is not, it's not going to do it for me. You know, I really should be opening up myself, you know, in every regard. Like, okay, this is what your bias is. Coming into an organization, coming into an environment, knowing what my bias is, and then opening myself up and saying, okay, do something different this time, so you can have a different outcome. Because again, my intention is not to be prejudiced. You know, my intention is not to discriminate. My intention is not to, you know, only gravitate to a certain thing. But the impact of me doing that affects people in a way that that is not always a positive outcome for them. And I have to be aware of that, and I have to challenge that every single day.
Yeah, I think one of the keys there is, and you hit on it in so many different ways, is awareness of yourself, of the labels you use, the labels you apply to yourself, where you fit yourself in, where your ego jumps in, and how can you step back and take a look at something from with all of that removed, and then set your path going forward. Our next question is, how does an effective D&I recruiting strategy affect the candidate experience? That's a big one.
Well, yeah, it is a big one, and I'm going to try and be brief on this one, because we talk about candidate experience again. I think from a touch point that may not be the best one, and I think that candidate experience is ongoing. It's always happening. It happens before a job is opened. It's in your website. It's in the jobs that you have posted. It's in the way that it's in the products that your organization sells. It's in the services that your organization offers. It's in the language they use, the way that they market, the way that they brand. Like, all of that lends itself to candidate experience. It's the way that people talk about your company, those that are there and doing it anonymously on those those employer review sites, or it's the people who had a bad experience once they became a candidate. They went from or never even did. I mean, we have applicants. I feel like applicants are the main ones, and perhaps there's a study that's already done on this. I'm not sure, but I feel like applicants, the folks who never actually make it to the interview stage per se, or don't make it to the even the screening stage, are the ones who have the worst things to say about organizations who quote unquote rejected them, as opposed to the people who got further along in the process. And the reason for that is because at those points you're able to start building a relationship in different ways. So for recruiters specifically, no matter where you work, like, you are engaging the candidate experience at all times. So, because how many of us have been contacted by someone who we treated fairly, someone who we treated kindly, someone who we even just said something that we didn't even think was a big deal, had them fix one thing on their resume or whatever the case may be, and the next time that person's looking for a position, they reach out to you. Or when they land a job, and maybe they didn't take your job, or maybe they weren't selected, but like I said, because of the way that you managed that relationship, because you treated them in a way that was kind, empathetic, and made them feel like a person and like they mattered, regardless of whether or not they were offered the position. They may say, oh, my this good potential employee is looking, and they'll give your name out to people. I know a great recruiter. So we all have those experiences, and like I said, recruiters specifically are engaging candidate experience all the time, as our organizations, but I think we do so in a more intimate way. So when we do have recruiting strategies that are sound and that are effective, that we will be able to attract talent that we wouldn't necessarily feel like maybe they should apply. There are a great deal of studies, just speaking from a gender perspective, there are a great deal of studies that say how a job description or job posting is written, how it affects women as opposed to how it affects men. Or staying with gender, when you come to an interview and there are all white men, or there are all men in the interview, how the outcome turns out as far as one woman being interviewed versus a man being interviewed who actually gets hired or who gets selected for the position first. So, there's a lot of those things, and recruiters not only need to be aware of it, but they need to be the advocates. They need to be the folks who are pushing for, again, more positive outcomes for both the organization and for the job seeker.
Well, it seems, a lot of responsibility really falls to the
It does.
recruiter, and there's a lot of, the organization is responsible for pushing this every in all aspects of the business, of course. Is there any, tactical, hands-on places a recruiter might, let's say a recruiter wants to take on this initiative on their own if they're in an environment where it doesn't exist? Do you have any advice for that person where they might be able to carve out their own, maybe they can start everything going within an
Yeah,
organization? I know that's a question we get quite a bit.
that's a difficult place to be in.
Mm.
It's a space that I've been in before. And again, it's I had such positive experiences with job seekers or even with hiring managers,
Mhm.
inside of a toxic environment, that those things, not that they didn't go on, because they did, but I was kind of shielded from them in the sense that I was still able to do my work. I didn't win, so to speak,
Mhm.
every single time, but having the ability to speak up, having the ability to advocate, you know, just being trusted, um, because and knowing that you want to maintain those professional relationships, and that you want to, preserve them, has lended itself well to me. You're not going to change everyone's mind, and like I said, I think trust goes a long way. I think relationships go a long way. And if it turns out that it's unbearable, because I've been in an unbearable situation as well. I worked someplace for only 9 days.
Ooh.
Yes. Yeah. On the ninth day, I closed my laptop and said, I don't work here anymore. It was that bad. Those In those situations, like, you have to understand, like, that no matter what you do, no matter how good you are, those things are going to change. And recruiters aren't tied to the organization any more so than an employee is, and a different employee. Like, you don't have to stay there. Go someplace else. Take your skills someplace else. Go someplace else where you can have a better impact. So if you can't affect change inside of your organization, making those, we're back to that analogy that I get wrong, making those drops
Yeah.
to get a big hole, because the more you drop, the bigger that hole's going to get, and the wider that's going to spread, and people will catch on to that and do that. If that's not possible, if they're just putting a new bucket in every time, then it's time for you to move to another organization, to be quite honest.
I have a couple of questions that came in here.
Okay.
And one of them's, it's a longer question, gives a lot of background to it. So just give me 1 second here to pull it up, and then two more. Let's see if I can get this all in here. This one's from uh, David Marr. Hi, David. Um, he said, what are your thoughts about this? To me, it seems like we are always just robbing Peter to pay Paul. When it comes from recruiting D&I talent from one company and to another, but what is really being done to help the adequate training and opportunities for diverse populations that don't have access or opportunity for the upskilling and training? I think that companies have to be creative and flexible to solve D&I disparities within their respective companies. For example, Seattle, Washington has a very small Black population, but Atlanta, Georgia has a large one. Opening offices, or at least being open to people working remotely so they can truly include D&I candidates into the process. I think there is also a lot of lip service that is done within a lot of the traditional industries, banking, healthcare, et cetera, that doesn't actually roll out effective D&I recruitment strategies.
No, thank you. Like, all of those are great points, and some that I was
Yeah.
going to get to.
So yeah, and we can say that we will
Like,
get touch on
we're
that in a
done.
minute.
Like, thank you.
Yeah.
They wrapped it up for us. No, but no, those are all great points. Especially your point about access, and the way that we are going about getting talent. Uh, one of the things that, this is, it's like 2 slides ahead, but
Mhm.
we can talk about this. one of the things that I really think we need to stop doing is applying applying recruiting strategies, the ones that we've always done to get, the power majority, or to get, the homogeneous groups to come and like our companies, stop applying those same strategies in different, or, quote unquote, diverse spaces. So the way that you recruit at my alma mater, University of Richmond, is not going to be the same way that you recruit at an HBCU like Virginia State University. It's not the same. If you're really serious, you're not going to bring the same people in terms of hiring managers. You're not going to limit, and this happens a lot, you limit the positions that you're offering, meaning that you've already decided, and this is a belonging issue. This is a balance issue, sorry. And that's another B that people use in the DEIB acronym. Balance, meaning that, yeah, your organization is sitting here saying how diverse they are, that they're 25% when, the outside world is only 20, and they're doing so much better, and they're going to, up that, X, Y, and Z. But when all of that diverse talent is in one pocket of the organization, or at one level of the organization, that's not true. That's not true D&I work. It's intentional, meaning that yes, you have done the due diligence and hired those people, but they're not spread. They're not seen everywhere. There's no balance in how they're represented inside of the organization. So, I'm going to throw this out there, and some people may disagree, but we can look at certain industries, we can look at certain trade crafts and say, okay, again, and this is from my experience working at larger defense and intel companies, a lot of the accounting staff look the same. A lot of, even I'm speaking from a diverse perspective, like they were all part of the same racial minority. And, a lot of the entry level, say, executive assistants look the same, gender wise, race wise. So, when you're already saying these are the positions that we're going to extend to, up our diversity numbers, you've already, again, made it so that you don't think that these people are good enough. You're already limiting the access and the opportunities that they have to get into those roles. And then one thing that, I didn't even realize that I was compartmentalizing or even working within was brought to my attention and verbalized by my friend John Baldino back in December. He talked about how historically, when you have certain positions and people were already historically excluded from them, and then you open a position and say, hey, we want a diverse talent slate. But again, you've written the job and based there and said that here are the requirements, here's what experience you had to have. You have to come from, a certain type of company. You come from a startup. You have to have, had this much business, have this much, be used to this much revenue and those type of things. And again, when these are roles that people were typically excluded from, when diverse talent were excluded from, you're already telling them that they're not going to be a part of it. So that gives you an out to say, hey, we can't find diverse talent. And we've seen that even this summer in the banking industry or in the financial services, where they're saying, oh, there's no diverse talent.
Wow, and there's another question here that actually fits into where you just went. This one's from Becky Watson. She had two questions. I'll put them out here. Can you share a couple of success examples with D&I initiatives, starting with websites, job postings, employer branding? Maybe point us to an employer website that is powerful in its DE&I language on its own career site website. I know that's kind of putting you on the spot. And you can think about, we can come back, we can always answer that after as well.
Yeah, that's a, thank you for those questions, Becky. That's a hard one. Let me just say, in terms of like website, as long as things are not performative, like I don't have a problem with that, because I'm seeing things through a different lens. Honestly, I'm seeing things through a different lens. So all summer we saw people changing their pages and putting up Black Lives Matter.
Yep.
You know, we saw the folks in Congress with kente cloth on. Like, to me, those things were performative, but to someone who is like, oh wow, this is great, and I'm not going to fault you for believing that or for that being your opinion. But when I tell you that there is, again, no impact to that, there's no positive income to that, that's not enough. So yes, you can have you know, all the pictures, stock photos of Black and brown and other people on your website that you want, but it's not accessible to someone who is deaf or blind or neurodiverse, or there's no way for them to, like, it's not manageable. Your process is too long. There's a whole lot of things. You know, your company can have the best website, can have the best language, but if you're in a place that's, for example, not accessible to public transportation, you know, you're way out where I live and no one can get to you. Like, what good does that do when there's a whole pool of talent who doesn't have a car or can't drive a car, that you're missing out on them. So I think that we have to think about this from the attraction, from the selection, and from the retention standpoint. And all of those things are great for attracting. All those things are going to get people to want to learn more about you. But if you don't have anything to back it up, I don't care how pretty, I don't care how awesome, I don't care what words you use, it doesn't matter. It was all for nothing.
Agree 100%. And Leslie Hunter threw a question out here to us. If the opportunity doesn't exist at my current company to move into D&I recruitment project program management, how would I break into this in another company? Typically, they want someone who has already done this.
Yeah,
that's true. They want the experience before the experience exists.
They do. And this is, again, we're moving down like this in future slides. No. I think this is great. This is what we intended for this is what we intended for this to be. We intended it to be a conversation. It's not so. That's a great point. And the thing is that all recruiters are diversity recruiters. They should be. You know, I had a webinar last summer about who should own diversity recruiting, so to speak. And I talked about how recruiting is the only one that gets that diversity moniker added to them, with the exception of the actual D&I groups or the D&I professionals. Excuse me, if your organization has them. You know, they may have a D&I leader, a D&I specialist, or whatever they're calling themselves. But recruiters are the only ones that are called, quote unquote, diversity recruiters. You don't see diversity HR. You don't see diversity HR VP. You don't see diversity compensation analyst. You don't see diversity finance advisor. Like, you don't see that. And I do think that there's a reason for that. I do think that in one way we're acknowledging the fact that recruiters, again, touch every part of the organization. They should be empowered and included in all of those, in every aspect, and creating and driving their own strategies. So is it Becky that asked the question?
Yes.
Okay. So Becky, when you
Leslie Hunter.
Sorry, Leslie. Okay. There was a Becky though, right?
There's a Becky Watson. Yep.
Okay. Yes. Leslie. So Leslie, when an organization is asking for someone who has experience with diversity recruiting, I challenge you in a positive way, not in a defensive type of way, to think about the ways that you have done that without that moniker being attached to it. And I can guarantee you that you have.
Oh, very good. All right, so now I know a lot of these questions are in upcoming slides, so let's move on to the next one. Who should be leading D&I recruiting, and does it make sense to differentiate between regular recruiting and diversity recruiting?
So I kind of just answered that. I do think that it should be a collaboration between senior leadership. You have to have buy-in from senior leadership first, but there should be collaboration between recruiting and D&I. It should not be something that is given to recruiters. Like, there should never be a time where recruiters not only had a seat at the table, but were a part of creating and the strategy itself. Like, they should not be handed it. They should not be told, okay, now go do, by someone else who does not, as their job, recruit. Like, that's not their primary job. And should we differentiate between regular recruiting and diversity recruiting? Again, in the words of my friend Janine Dennis, every recruiter is a diversity recruiter, or they should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just that should be the new job description, or it should be the job description ongoing. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Leslie threw another quick question out here. I'll throw it to you. How is the best way to start military veteran outreach and recruiting? Are there sites?
Early.
Yeah, there are sites.
That was one of my. I have a great relationship with a few veteran organizations, even ones who have internships. And again, it's a matter of meeting people where they are, speaking to them in the way that they are. Like, that transition process is 100% different than any other folks coming, either returning to the workforce or just starting out in the workforce. And there's a lot already being done. There are military outreach programs that are nationally and internationally known. And those are great places to start, with folks who already have a strategy, with folks that you can already partner with, who have the resources available, who have the people, and they go ahead and, they make sure that they're sending you the folks with the skill sets that you're looking for. They're making sure that folks are ready. They still have something called TAP, transition assistance programs.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I've learned from them is that they're always looking for industry folks. They're always looking for civilian, who are part of the hiring life cycle, to come in and help, because again, they're coming from a different perspective. So there's only so much that they can do, and that's a value add to your organization, to say, hey, listen, not only are we going to come in and do resume reviews, or come in and do interview training, or offer internships for folks who are still enlisted, or who may be separating in the next year, 2 years, whatever the case may be. There's definitely ways to partner with veteran organizations. And again, that's a great place to start the diversity initiatives, because veterans, again, go across every other marginalized demographic.
And I'll throw out there too, you can search veteran, recruiters who are veterans and veteran recruiters, specifically. Yeah. I know a part of our network, on recruitingtools.com, which is one of our sister sites, Dean DaCosta, who's a veteran himself, likes to talk and does talk quite a bit about recruiting veterans. He's a veteran himself, and he goes kind of deep into the places that he looks for veterans. where he finds veterans and tools and techniques that he would use, as well as sourcing strategies. He's really a sourcer recruiter. He does both really well. So you might look up Dean. Of course, we have this content on our site, so a little self-promotion there, but he's available. And then there's quite a few others as well. We also had a question come in from Jeremy Schwartz.
Okay.
Do you believe in having a rule to interview 3 or more diverse candidates before making an offer for one position?
No.
Okay. And
Did you want me to say why?
No, it's okay.
Like,
you can
no.
expand if you like. Or no, you don't.
Can you ask Jeremy Jeremy, is that good enough for you? No.
Jeremy, if that's not sufficient, let us know. He said good enough for him. Yeah.
Okay.
Kristen McKinney asked a question. There's a few in here, so I'll throw them out at you. What are ways we as recruiters and talent leaders can diversify our approach in sourcing talent? And then she goes on to ask, what are some specialized groups, job boards, or community groups that would be important for us to be building relationships with? And what advice could you share with us to determine the right metrics to use to measuring our impact?
Okay. What was the first question?
Yeah, I get it. So how can we diversify our approach in sourcing talent?
So go to different places. Like there are diversity job boards. There are, again, that cater to everything. Neurodiversity, veteran outreach, gender, race, ethnicity, early career, age, all of those things. So people returning to work from, that were formerly incarcerated, all of those things, mothers returning to work, or family members returning to work after taking care of a loved one. There are a great deal of sites that cater to specific demographics, and I say tap into them, all of them.
Her second question kind of says, do you have any specific specialized, any names you could throw out of ones you might use or recommend? That's kind of the second question.
I do, but some of them pay me. So.
Oh, well, go ahead.
Yeah, and I don't want to. I don't know if that's a conflict for you.
No, it isn't.
Okay. So Hiretual is an AI tool that you can choose diversity demographics that you want to look at.
To be fair on that too, I would say Seek Out, which is a competitor to them, does the same thing.
I was going to get to them because
sorry. I figured I'd balance you there.
Out, Talview, diversity jobs. What else?
What I'll say to the audience, I'll say that maybe Keirsten and I will put together a nice list and posts and send it out to everybody so we can kind of get some of these, because it's kind of tough to pull them all together right now.
Yeah,
we can come up with some of this recommendation for you.
And again, I did a webinar this summer that had Seek Out as one of the featured guests. So and we have a whole list of organizations that you could tap into. That I will make sure you guys get access to.
We'll make sure it comes to everyone who's listening. We'll make sure it comes to you in the post-webinar package that we send out. Her last part of that question was, what advice can how about metrics? What metrics do you think are important to use to measure?
Okay. I think we need to look just past hiring because that doesn't always tell the whole story. We also need to be looking at when people are leaving the process and what type of people are leaving the process. And we need to look at when people are leaving the organization and what type of people are leaving the organization and why, and not just their exit interview said better opportunity, because we know people don't tell the truth. So, or excuse me, I shouldn't say they don't tell the truth. People aren't interested in telling you why you suck.
They're already out the door.
Once they've already checked out, yes.
Rita Williams asked a good question here. Even though companies say they desire D&I, let's face it, most companies desire to implement a D&I program, but they are not able to change people's attitudes and biases, of course. recruiters. I think companies should be honest about where their companies are at with regards to diversity. What should companies do to bring in the person, as they may need to bring someone in who doesn't mind being the first. I think that kind of lends into your next slide, which I'll say, Ashley, is what's the one thing you'd like organizations to start, stop, and continue as it relates to D&I recruitment? So we can probably hit that all up there.
Yeah, I touched on this a little bit earlier, because I know we are running out of time. Start thinking about diversity outside of the numbers, and look internally for balance. You already have, like, a lot of organizations already have diverse talent inside of their organization, but because, again, they sit in a certain role, they're not looking to upskill them. They're not looking to transition them into a leadership position. They're not looking to move them to a new department, whether it be laterally, to give them, a new experience, or to relocate them to a new location if that's available. So look internally and seek balance. And again, think of diversity as more than numbers. We have to start doing that. We have to stop saying we hit our targets. Like, people are not targets.
Yeah,
Oh, that was very bad. Oh, they're going to get me. No, that's going to be recorded.
People are not targets. It's a good one.
I make mistakes. But the whole hand gesture, that wasn't necessary. And I need to really not do that ever again. Let's just stop. Again, stop applying the same recruiting strategies to diverse populations that you do everyone else. Because again, what works in one place does not work in another. Noel mentioned a great veteran recruiter, someone who was a veteran who is now recruiting. That is a huge value add because they speak the same language. He knows how to relate to them. There are nuances that I would not pick up on. As much experience as I have had in veteran hiring, there's still some things that are missing just because I am not a veteran. And we can say the same for other groups. And then what to continue evolving, continue evaluating, continue on. Like, I don't like that we start and stop diversity initiatives. We have these campaigns, especially, again, for a lot of places, diversity recruiting includes college hiring. So we have our college hiring season, and then we don't think about entry-level employees outside of those months. We don't think about them at all. We think about them during intern season, and then how we're going to convert them, and who we need that we're not converting, or that our intern population doesn't already encompass. Like, we need to stop doing that. It needs to be ongoing for everything. Again, this summer was volatile. Every organization came out with a statement. They let you know that they're here for everybody and everyone, kumbaya. But as soon as the election was over, everybody's like, whew, go back to normal. We're not put up with this SHIT anymore. I didn't know if I was able to curse, so I didn't.
You're fine.
It's like, we don't have to put up with this anymore. Now we can go back to normal, so to speak. So keep it going. Continue it. It is not a one-stop shop. It is not a start and stop. It is continual, and it needs to be ongoing, and it needs to continue to evolve.
This is a question that came up. I think we should touch on, because we've written about it at Recruiting Daily before, but I'd love to get your take. What are other resources or structures you have seen companies roll out as part of their DE&I strategies? For example, ERGs, employee resource groups.
I didn't. You broke up a little bit. I didn't hear the beginning of the question.
Yeah. Do you have me now? Okay. What other resources or structures have you seen companies roll out as part of their DE&I strategies? For example, ERGs, employee resource groups.
Yes, I have seen ERGs. And I've also seen folks get in the community, meaning that they are looking, like, the communities that they're in, they are being better citizens inside of them, offering their services to folks. I mean, we have, for example, the company Calm. You've heard of them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they're like a meditation and wellness app, mindfulness application. And one of the things that they did specifically for HR folks who are sometimes overlooked when it comes to managing our mental and emotional wellness in the workplace was they offered their app for free for a time being for HR professionals. And that's a value add in the sense that it will also, the folks who are deciding is Calm going to be a benefit in my organization? Those are the folks who are now, they're users, and who better to use your product than the people who can also purchase your product and who can offer it to other people. And again, the same thing can be done for your organization as it relates to diversity initiatives, in the sense that, if you know that you're in a marginalized community, or you want to serve a marginalized community, do that, do those things, serve them, make yourself known in a way that they know that you're a part of their community and that you're wanting to uplift them. Offer internships, sponsor robotics teams for my technical folks at the high schools, at the middle schools. We always look at college as the next step, and I think a lot of what we do, even in the advice that I give from a career coach perspective, or in the insight that I give from a talent acquisition perspective to employers, is I've been in corporate America. I've been a white collar worker for so long that we totally missed the mark on a whole segment of folks who, also we should be adding value to. We're not looking at blue collar workers, and we're not offering them the same type of services that we are other people, and we need to do a better job at that. The pandemic has given me an opportunity as a marginalized person to think about the people who are even more so marginalized than I am, and think about how I'm engaging them, thinking about how I am being a better citizen, how I'm being a better advocate, how I'm providing more access, and just being creative in how I reach them, and how I can assist them with their career journey, or whatever the case may be.
Okay, well, this has been excellent. We're bouncing up towards the end of our time. What's our next slide there, Ashley?
Oh, yeah, I think this is the last slide.
Okay. What are some of the things you feel are important for people to understand and have perspective on in terms of what you struggle with and have to maneuver in recruiting as a marginalized person?
So first and foremost, I'm always coming from a place of double-mindedness. Like I said, I'm Black first, and imagine me 21 years ago as a technical recruiter and being the only. And still to this day, I meet people, again, 21 years later, who have never met a Black recruiter. Or when I have, or again, having a seat at the table, so to speak, because I had built relationships inside of my org, because I was well respected and trusted by my hiring managers and the leaders and stakeholders, because I had the ability to do special projects and do certain things. I had situational privileges in some ways, but I truly wasn't empowered. When it came time to do a project for picking a new recruiting system for a global company, I was the representative from my segment, and my manager pulled me aside before I went and said, "Don't say anything." Basically, like, just sit there, like they don't want to hear that. I would challenge people, and if certain people ask me certain questions, or approach me in certain ways and say, "Oh, are you doing this because I'm Black?" And then being told, "Don't say that." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" "Well, don't tell people that you're Black. You don't need to remind them of that." And I'm like, "I'm sorry." Like, what? Just again, having to wrestle with that. And one of the main things that I have had to wrestle with especially as it relates to bringing people into organizations, is when it's a toxic environment for me, how can I, in good conscience, tell someone else who looks like me or who has the same experiences that I have, for, you know, from a different part of my identity? How can I tell them to come and work here and be okay with that? Like that's very difficult, especially when people expect, you know, transparency and authenticity, which they're going to get from me. Or when I challenge a hiring manager or challenge a business leader, respectfully, even when they're not respectful of me, and say, you know, here are the things that I'm noticing. Here's where we can do better. Is this the case? Or, you know, am I seeing this the right way? And, you know, there's this whole, you know, nope, she has no right to say that. Or when I am giving a training, for example, for a recruiting department, and, you know, there was a time I had my, the person that I was training to do the job, because I was transitioning out of the recruiting department into the business side of things. And I was running the recruiter training, and the person that I was training, you know, to take over for me, like, because they were a white male, no one saw me as the authority. You know, they automatically assumed that that person was in charge because of the way that because they were a white male and I was a Black woman. And you know, those type of situations happen a great deal. You know, being undermined in meetings, being undermined and talked over in interviews, you know, it just a lot of stuff. Or, you know, being told, well, you're not that kind of X, Y, or Z, and feeling comfortable to have certain conversations. And now I have to, you know, push back. And now I have to tell you why what you said was completely offensive and wrong. And you want to, you know, point it out as a joke. You know, that becomes that's a hard space to be in. And lastly, because now we've gone over time,
Sure.
you know, this is not a fun state, mentally and emotionally, for me as a Black person in America right now. Now that everyone knows, and everyone has witnessed what Black people, you know, face and we take on, because we do, you know, Black people are seen as one thing, as one people. So when one Black person does something, then every Black person is responsible for that. So it's difficult to get up every day and to show up and to be my best self, especially as it relates to helping people get a job, or to talking about you know, great things that organizations are doing. Like sometimes I don't damn feel like it. Like sometimes I am tired and I am exhausted and I am mentally drained and I do not have the energy. And in doing so, I've been able to give myself more grace. I've been able to give others more grace. This conversation, even the fact that I'm even talking to Recruiting Daily right now, is a result of that type of thing, because there was someone who challenged something that your group had done and used something that happened to me, you know, or that I thought happened to me, because I was listening to, again, the things that were going on outside of me. And again, because I didn't have the energy to devote to certain things that I considered just not important, to be quite honest. You know, that's how this conversation even came about. You know, someone using me as an example of how you guys have not done the right thing every single time. And guess what? I don't do the right thing every single time. No one does the right thing every single time. But me being able to speak up and say, not only did I want to apologize because I was wrong when I found out I was wrong, you know, not only did I want to apologize, but I wanted to do it in person. Like, it wasn't an email, oh, tell them that I said X, Y, and Z. You know, it was no, like, let's get on the phone. Like, let's talk about the situation and do that. And I think that the more we do have these courageous conversations, I think the more that we do extend grace to one another, the better off we'll be. And, we will be able to start to have more effective DEIB conversations, DEIB recruiting. And again, look to me to do more than talk about diversity. This is nothing against you guys. I actually chose this one. So it wasn't like you came to me and said, talk about diversity. I could have talked about anything in recruiting, and I was told that beforehand, and I said, no, let's do this one. But again, I challenge everyone, not just the folks on this call. When you are looking at don't just go to a marginalized person when it's their turn, when it's something that only affects their marginalized group. Like you can look at a woman, outside of March, call them. It's just because it's not Women's History Month doesn't mean they don't
That's
have
right.
it today. You can call a Black person outside of February. We have something to say inside of our expertise. Yes, we have expertise and we have experiences. So rely on that, not just what we represent.
So I think now, what's our next slide?
The end. I think it's the end.
Just about. We're a little over time, but that's okay because this all had to be said. Thank you. I mean, I love this topic. Our company loves covering this kind of conversation because it's probably one of the biggest areas that recruiters really need help with. It's the and the more conversation we have, the more change we make. And I thank you so much for your time. How can people find you? What's the best way for them to find you and get in contact with you?
I'm at Trap Recruiter on all social media. You're probably not going to spell Keirsten correctly, so just at Trap Recruiter. And then
Keirsten.
Kei, yes.
Yep.
And then if you want to email me, I think my email address is listed here, info@traprecruiter.com.
Yeah, and everyone attending will get our email with all that contact information, of course. Anything parting? I mean, you did such a great job. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you again. I ended the way that I did for a reason. Thank you guys for opening up your platform to me. I am so glad that we were both just able to not let noise exclude each other from being a part of each other's professional lives. So I truly appreciate you and all the work that you're doing at Recruiting Daily, and look forward to continued success and helping you in any way that I can.
I hope we can work together more because there's definitely a lot of things we could touch on and make this even more exciting. So thank you so much, Keirsten, and everyone who attended. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
From all of us at Recruiting Daily. We truly appreciate it. All right.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.